Welcome everybody. Let's get started then at 2 minutes past. Warm welcome to the Essex Climate Action Commission meeting, first of the year, March 2024, the fourth year of the Commission. So nice to see you all. We'll get pretty much straight into the SIG updates in a moment. I haven't got much to kind of set the scene really, apart from I'm pretty sure that you will have all been across the latest numbers and the data for the warmest February on record for the world at plus 1.77 degrees. So last year was 1.48, and the second month of the new year, where the average for the month is 1.77. So that hope of keeping things below 1.5 degrees is beginning to evaporate, isn't it? So it doesn't mean to say we should give up. We should just note that and just say even more urgency if we haven't already got enough. But it's a pretty kind of terrifying thought that we might be quickly changing baseline syndrome, but upwards to thinking that 2 degrees would be a kind of reasonable target, and I think we all know it ain't. But it's a heck of a challenge, isn't it? If we're going to be pushing past 1.5 already, and we've been hoping not to see that before 2050. So on that note, setting the scene, I think there's not much more we can really say with that. So meeting today is the thematic focus is on water, as you will have gathered. Thank you for the presenters for preparing your slides in advance so people could have a look at them. We'll come to that after the special interest group updates, and we've got the 7 of those, and I'm going to propose that we just get started. I made the point to Louise just before we started that we haven't actually got the names of the presenters on the agenda or on the PowerPoints, so apologies, because normally I would introduce you by name, but I think I'm going to have to introduce you by SIG and then just ask you to name check so that people are able to do that, because it may be that there are 1 or 2 subs kind of off the bench to do their bit for the SIGs for today. So thank you for doing that. So let's get pretty much started then. First SIG will be the Land Use and Green Infrastructure Group. Who's
yeah. I'll just pull up the slides. I'll just pull up the slides, Jules.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, sorry, Louise, please do. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think it's me. It's Dave Chapman here. I think I'm John Meehan's understudy for the meeting.
Okay, Dave. Thanks very much indeed. Yeah, lovely.
Sorry,
delighted you can do it. So we just wait for the slides to come up, and here we go. So as is customary, I think what we'll do.
Start.
Okay, so that's waste. So I think we need.
Yeah, apologies, Jules. Just a second.
Yeah, we'll work our way backwards through the presentation.
Yeah, sorry about that. Slight hiccup.
That looks a bit more familiar.
There we go. Right.
Lovely. All right, great stuff. What we'll do the normal thing of saving the questions and answers bit to after the presentation. So let's kind of have the summary of each of these and then put them together in a kind of collective piece for questions at the end of it all. So Dave, if you'd like to proceed. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, thanks, Louise. So the first project I wanted to update is the rain gauge project. So for us, we are Essex County Council are leading on the delivery of 35 rain gauges across 7 different partnering authorities. The idea of the project is to fill in gaps where there is a bit of a shortfall in surface water data collection. As we know, surface water is a bit of an unknown quantity. So what we've done with our partners is identify where there is gaps in that information, that knowledge gathering, and we are leading on the delivery of a project across those areas. Total value of the project, as it says there, is just shy of 430,000. And that is all 100% EA funded. This project did start life off as an EA project. there was issues with delivery, so Essex have stepped in to then lead on that project and get the delivery, and which will be delivered this calendar year. So that's the first one. Next slide, if you'd like, please, Louise. I'm mindful that I've told I've got 5 minutes, so I will sort of just give a brief overview, and like you say, Jules, we can then cover questions at the end. The next slide, Louise, if that's all right.
Yeah, you're on mute, Louise. It's the old.
Apologies, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to stop and start again. I'm really sorry. I'm not quite sure what's going on.
Okay.
Dave, do you want to talk and then the slides will catch you up?
Yeah, sure.
We'll catch up.
So the next one will be the Essex Forest Initiative, hopefully, if that does appear at some point. So there we go. So the target planting numbers for year 4 of the EFI were 100,000 trees. And I'm pleased to say, as it says on the slide, that we've planted 138,000 this year. So we have seen a really sharp incline in the amount of trees and hedgerows and woodland that's been created across the 4 years of the current project. If it was also the anticipation that we could get another 30,000 trees and hedgerows planted by the end of March as well, because we have planting partners that are still on the ground and they are still doing everything they can to get more numbers in. So that number may go north of 138,000, which is really, really good for us. During the project, we've created over 75 hectares of woodland and planted nearly 24,000 metres of hedgerows. So one of the big improvements that the EFI team have been working on or involved in is the tree statement for ECC. So that is hopefully where we can then look at working with more partners, particularly in areas like highways and infrastructure, where we can look to deliver more trees and planting and provide those significant benefits that tree planting does, like cooling the street scene, carbon sequestration, all of those other good environmental benefits that they provide. And then last but not least should be our NFM bid for Hockley Woods. So this was a national process that the Environment Agency and DEF were involved in. We put a bid in for Hockley Woods, where we're looking to deliver 8 leaky dams within a current ancient and SSSI woodland. Now, the project will see some pre-installation monitoring, so that gives us our baseline. So we're looking at what sort of surface water flows are in the area, how much quantities and volumes that we're looking at, and then we will deliver these 8 dams in strategic locations where we can slow the flow, store more water, and if we can, potentially create areas of natural ponding, wet woodland and things like that as well. And then the post-installation monitoring, again, will just give us the evidence to show, have these dams been successful, have they done what they're designed to do, and we can then tweak and modify the locations or increase them in size, and so on and so forth. The good thing is that we'll look to use Roy, our show heavy horse that's worked with us before in delivering leaky dams, and he always steals the show. Because it's a SSSI and an ancient woodland, we've got to be very sensitive about how we deliver projects like this. So it reduces our carbon footprint, and we also then have the using of the horses, which is a traditional method that really always does go down well. Just a little bit of information on the bottom paragraph there, the bottom bullet point, to show why we've chosen Hockley as a potential project area. There is 127 properties that are downstream of Hockley Woods that have been modelled to be at surface water flood risk, and that increases to 232 when you include the climate change factor into that modelling resilience. So it's a very significant area with some flood history as well. So all in all, a really good project that we're working with Rochester District Council on as well, who are the landowners. That's my 3 whizzy slides, so thank you.
Hi everyone,
Okay,
so Luciana.
so sorry, Luciana, the mute wasn't coming off, so the central control of mutes. And so I just wanted to say thank you before you begin, Luciana. Thank you, Dave. That was great. I wonder whether just to spring something on you, and we'll come back to this in a moment. Could the SIGs also have just a headline thought about the big idea for this year coming, for 2024? Just pick one thing that we're going to look back on and think that was really good. You've picked 3 in the presentation there, Dave. Is there something else that you would say, by the end of the year, we will have done this in the Luigi group? Let's come back to that. So I don't, it's a bit unfair just springing it on you at this point. But if the other speakers would like to finish and then say, and this year, you know, we're really going to be focusing on this in addition to what I've talked about, that would be quite nice. But I realize that's really unfair chairing to spring that. So we can come back to that in the after wrap up as if we want to as well. Thank you. So Luciana, energy and waste.
Oh, I won't do the waste. I will do just the energy bit. So, hi everyone. So I'm stepping in for Tom Day that usually gives you these updates. So I'll start with our award-winning community energy program. We keep growing that activity with community groups in Essex, supporting them to lead on community energy projects. We are working at the moment with 15 groups and also 12 parish councils. There's really good coverage in the north of the county now around Colchester, Tendring and Uttlesford. So thinking about the future, like Jules just asked, well, this program needs to grow more in the south of the county. So that's definitely the focus of the support that we are commissioning to continue that in the next 12 months. So get more groups in the south of the county. We already have a really good, interesting activity starting in Basildon, which is actually a group led by young people. We've got 2 directors already, and the group is recruiting 1 more to start this new group led by people between 18 and 25-year-olds. So really interesting activity. But yeah, like I said, like we've got quite good coverage in the north of the county, and then we will the next 12 months we will focus more support to create more groups in the south, and especially on leveling up areas. Next slide, please, Louise. So this is my colleague Louise will recognize the picture here. So some really successful workshops that she led in Jaywick in November and February this year with the community there. A different approach, we call it community-led energy planning. So we are asking the community to think what energy means for them and how they want to get involved in the energy transition. There's likely a group, there is a group starting already in Jaywick led by residents there to look at the opportunities for renewable energy for them. But in the short term, some energy advice based in the community as well. Some colleagues also attended a reception in Parliament recently to push some policy on community energy to benefit communities, not just in Essex, but nationally, the local energy bill. Next slide, please. So the retrofit, my colleagues keep working on bringing those central government grants to Essex, so make sure the Essex residents don't have any gaps in access of these grants, the home upgrade grant, the Eco4 scheme. So those were more to do with the low income households, but there's also growing work on the able to pay sector, and community power is a project that is a grant funded scheme that will be exploring that. So how we do that to enable the able to pay sector to do more retrofit. Next slide, please. And finally, our work on local energy. We've got the SNET project, which is funded by the Innovate UK Pathfinder Places. It's about non-technical barriers to enable local communities to bring forward local renewable energy projects at scale. Some really good work in our state as well, feasibility work that we've commissioned to local partnerships to look at the viability of a solar farm in 2 sites owned by ECC with options for private wire connections.
Thanks, Luciana. I'm going to pick up on the waste elements under the energy and waste SIG. So things have been really busy in waste. We're progressing well with the work on the development of a joint strategy for waste management across the county. So this is a 30-year strategy bringing together 13 councils. So the 12 district, borough and city councils who are collecting waste, and the county council that is responsible for disposing of waste. We're at the point now where we have carried out an extensive public consultation on a draft strategy that was completed at the tail end of last year, and had really good levels of support for a strategy which really focuses around adoption and embedding the circular economy, reducing waste at source, and maximising recycling and reuse. The strategy itself is very much aligned with the recommendations of the Commission, which I think is a really good sort of link back to the work, the early work we did as part of the SIG, and is really looking at moving us away from landfill entirely, and maximising recycling to sort of world-leading levels. So ambitions to hit or targets to hit 65% within the by 2035, with an aspiration to achieve a 70% recycling rate, as well as really tackling the amount of residual waste, so halving residual waste by 2042. So we've got some really stretching, challenging targets in there, but we're getting all of the partners aligning behind this, and decisions on adopting that strategy are being taken later this year. We expect the first decision point to be in June, when this will be taken to Essex County Council's cabinet, and then future decisions taken by the individual authorities to also adopt and endorse that. One of the things that really underpins the strategy, though, is, and this is, it's critical to its success, is carrying our residents on that journey with us. So if we just ping forward onto the next slide, really pleased that the County Council has approved a £2.4 million investment in a behaviour change programme. So this is initially an 18-month programme of work, really trying to understand what actions are needed to achieve that step change in waste reduction and recycling. So one of the things we recognise, we've got some really good services in Essex, but we still have a large proportion of the population who are not using those services. So what we're trying to do is understand what are the blockages, what do we need to do in terms of redesigning of services, or also what do we need to do in terms of supporting residents to take that next step in terms of reusing their waste, reducing their waste, or participation in recycling services. So we've got a number of programs of work that we are working up at the moment. We are doing that within the local authority partnership, but also looking at how we draw in community organisations and other interested groups into those particular work streams, to see how we can really test some different and innovative ways of delivering waste services and engaging with residents. And then on the back of those trials, looking at then how do we scale those up to operate those at a county-wide level. Next slide, please. One of those ones that we've already kicked off and we will be expanding as part of this behaviour change programme is the food waste trial. So this was about how do we provide additional support to residents to utilise those food waste recycling services that they have access to. We've been running this activity now for about 6 months, and we've been engaging with almost 400,000 households across the county, providing them with further information around their services, compostable caddy liners to encourage them to participate in that service, and also distributing additional caddies, where the original ones have been lost or repurposed. And what we're actually seeing is some really positive outcomes from that trial. The first phase of that intervention and the analysis is showing a 20% increase in the capture of food waste for recycling in those trial areas. So again, I think that's really encouraging results coming through. And again, I think shows the power of the partnership working together to deliver both on collection and disposal to try and deliver those changes. Next slide, please. Also, another one I just wanted to highlight, and this is targeting a material which actually doesn't make a huge amount of difference when we start looking at overall performance in terms of recycling rates, but is really important when we look at trying to reduce the environmental impacts of dealing with waste. And this is targeting a material which often does end up in the residual waste stream, flexible plastics, plastic films. And what we have is a trial program operated by Malden District Council, looking at the operational challenges, opportunities, and design of operational services to maximise the collection of this material. So they've been running this now for about 7 months, targeting 6,000 properties in their area. And what they're doing is building up that really strong evidence base and best practice guidance to enable this to be rolled out within other authorities. And this is really important for us because, again, when we link this back to the strategy, we have within the strategy a target to ensure all residents have access to flexible plastic recycling from their curbside by 2027. So this information is really integral to making sure we get those services designed right at the beginning, so that we can maximise the participation in those services. So lots of things happening, and hopefully that gives people a flavour of the direction that we're moving in over the next 12 months. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jason. Sorry, I didn't introduce you properly at the beginning. Very, very interesting and helpful. And I think you can see there the value of having kind of clear targets, like saying flexible plastic recycling from every household by 2027. That's the target, and that's only 3 years away. I mean, that's kind of country national leadership to be doing that sort of thing. So super impressed with all of those actions. Obviously that is helped by having a clear strategy as well. So that's great. Let me come back to some capping thoughts again in a little while. Thanks for that, and thanks, Luciana. I didn't thank you when you'd finished. Great. So built environment.
Thank you, Jules. That's for me.
Graham, welcome. Thanks very much.
Thanks very much. So just to remind ourselves, we still have 20% of Essex to build by 2050. So that's upwards of 200,000 new homes. And just thinking about your big headline target, Jules, where would we be by the end the end of this year? I'd like to shift and make sure that we've got at least 40,000 of those 200,000 homes designated as net carbon zero. We've already got one local authority that's in that position, Uttlesford. I think we'll certainly be seeing very, very shortly Chelmsford also moving to that position. So 40,000 would be off the top of my head, but let's proceed. So just to remind ourselves, why are we doing this? And it's not being changed by government because government's building standards do not require net zero. So these are the 6 things that we need to look at. So next slide, please, Louise. So what we already know, it's viable to do it. We've got the evidence. Legally, we're in a strong position to do it. And we've got the net policy zero evidence base in place, which, as I say, all of the local authorities have endorsed, and some of them are now embedding into their plans. So the updates for you on the next slide are, so what's quite interesting is we're having a bit of a conversation with government at the moment, because government have just consulted on the Future Home Standard, which are very, very much substandard and not actually, haven't really moved the dial from the existing building standards. So we've provided a response for the East of England. So the Climate and Planning Unit at Essex have provided the technical advice for the East of England. They've also provided advice and a response for the ADEPT group, which is Association of Directors for Environment, Planning and Transport, so that's a national body. And we've also provided that on behalf of all of the chief planners in Essex, along with ourselves. And basically it's saying that our evidence is indicating if you go for fabric first, go for net carbon zero, actually is as cost effective, and it delivers lots of benefits, not least health, fresh air, addresses fuel poverty, etc., etc. So it's a very strong message we've sent back to government. We've updated our legal advice. So along with the Future Home Standard being published in December, government also produced a written ministerial statement saying to local authorities that they can't set their own energy standards better or higher standards than that's what's set out by government. The last time they did that, that was challenged by a judicial review and overthrown. The current ministerial statement is already subject to a judicial review, and I suspect from the advice that we've had that won't stand water, won't hold water, so that's likely to disappear by the end of this year. And most local authorities are actually proceeding on that basis. We are also now working with a number of pilot net zero housing schemes. So just to remind ourselves, I mean, Brentwood Borough Council are producing net zero carbon homes when they go forward with any of their own schemes. We're also working with the Essex Housing Scheme, who have got an embedded carbon proposition. And we're also working with the Chelmsford Housing Partnership, or the scheme in Chelmsford, which is for 200 homes. So we're looking to deliver that as a sort of a pilot net zero scheme. And then just to remind ourselves, we're very fortunate with the sort of the staff that we've recruited into this team, and they were again nominated in a national award in the Eddie Awards. I'm disappointed to say they didn't win in that category, but the fact that they're being recognised and being sought after by various regional and national groups is telling me that we're on the right track. Thank you.
Fabulous. Thanks very much, Graham. Very interesting. Yeah, kind of watch this space then when it comes to the standards, and critical that we've got the evidence to show that net zero homes are no more expensive. This idea of the environment always being a kind of trade-off to the economy, we're kind of teasing that away with all the evidence that's being developed, and I think it's great that we're taking leadership on that. So thanks. Could I just ask a clarification? Was the evidence that you submitted from Essex on behalf of just Essex, or was that a regionally coordinated evidence? Did each county council do their own?
We produced some generic evidence for the region and the national level, and the evidence that's local to us in Essex was actually helpful in forming the regional and the national picture. So basically, because quite a lot of our evidence is now open source, so it's published on the Essex Design Guide website. So there's open legal advice, there's open advice, and lots of people are now using that all over the place. So the legal advice is generic, Jules. And likewise, probably the viability, it will vary a little bit in terms of location, but the general point about these homes not being more expensive to build than traditional homes is pretty standard as well.
Brilliant. Thanks so much indeed, Graham. Super. So we come to transport. Who's doing transport?
I am. Good morning, everybody.
Tracy, welcome. Thanks very much.
Hi there. So we continue along all our disciplines. This time of year is a little bit quieter for transport, largely on account of the lovely weather we've been having, putting pay to almost every type of work you can put in the ground. But despite that, and despite various other weather challenges, we've actually got a number of schemes delivered, and I know you all will always like pictures, so here's two lovely pictures for you. Top right is the new cycle lane in Panfield Lane in Braintree, and that was funded as part of our ATF2 work, Active Travel 2 schemes. And the image on bottom right is upgrade to an existing route in Chelmsford called Bunnies. And actually, no, don't, if that's the question, I don't know why it's called Bunnies. No one's ever been able to answer that. But if anyone has clarity on that, put it in the chat and you would resolve a decades-long mystery. So really pleased that we've delivered on those two. I've talked a lot about our Active Travel England schemes, and really pleased to say that Active Travel 2, which appears to have gone on for decades, is now pretty much done, except for Colchester, which was had delays due to opposition, but we're now progressing, and that should be complete not this calendar year, not this financial year, but by next financial year. We're also doing Active Travel 3 funded routes in Colchester, and Active Travel 4. So you've probably gathered by now that the bulk of funding for Active Travel comes from external sources, from Active Travel England, who attach to it various criteria as they are permitted as the funder. And what's really good about that is it gives us a robust starting point to challenge other schemes and other designs which don't meet those best practice. On other things, we have been focusing on Harlow as a priority area for a number of reasons, partly because of its levelling up challenges, partly because historically Colchester and Chelmsford have seen a lot of the active travel love. We've also got really bold ambitions as part of the Harlow Gilston Garden Town. So we've done theatre and education before. That's where we send a theatre group into year 6 and talk to them. Well, it's a little interactive show about air pollution, carbon, and what they can do to address it. So previously, we've targeted schools that are in 1 kilometre of an air quality management area. This time, we decided to focus on one area and see if the output is, see if there's any more demonstrable impact, particularly on walking and cycling to school, if all the schools in the area are doing it rather than cherry pick, because an individual school is not going to shift the dial, but if we work with all as a pilot, it might. So more to follow on that when we've analysed the results. Moving on to EV, one of the things we're trying to do with the larger ECC vehicles, so that's typically our home to school transport minibuses, but also a couple of library buses, is we're putting telematics in, which they've never had before, so we can better understand how they're being used and how they're being driven. That data will inform then decisions to roll out EV solutions or alternate fuel solutions in these larger vehicles because it's less standard. But the telematics also lets us understand data around braking and how efficiently they're driven, all of which will help us prioritise the EV rollout. Policy work continues, and our aspiration, I've discussed this before, is to have a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan for each district. I think we're nearly there. I think we're just starting conversations in tendering. This is crucial because without those plans, it's extremely difficult to get external funding. The first thing Active Travel England say to us is this route in your LC whips? We're also doing some speed management work. Our current strategy, which is legal, but makes it very difficult for us to introduce slower speeds, particularly around areas like schools. and we want to be able to make those changes to encourage sustainable transport to school, walking and cycling, but obviously safely. At the other end of the scheme, we've got the Chelmsford North East bypass work. That doesn't sit in my sustainable transport team specifically, as it's a major road interchange route. But the reason I mention it is because when we design up all these big schemes, whether it's Chelmsford North East bypass or the new Bewley station, we're putting active travel front and centre. Next slide, please.
Perhaps just a summary of this one,
Yeah,
Tracy?
I'm not going to go through it in detail. People can read it at their leisure. I'd be very interested if people have comments on this. We've revised our cycling strategy. It was last done in 2016. Actually, I think it might have been before that, 2011. So it's out of date, needs a refresh, sits very comfortably within our Everyone's Essex aspirations and our local transport plan aspirations. And those are the 6 key outcomes that we want to deliver. And we're focusing very much on outcomes and ultimately getting Essex towards a place where we support the national objectives of getting 50% of people or 50% of trips walking and cycling for shorter journeys. We will go out to consultation on this after the local elections, and it goes to scrutiny next week. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Lovely. Fantastic. Thanks very much indeed. Great. Let's press on to community engagement. Thank you, Tracy.
Hello, that will be me, Liam.
Welcome, Liam. Thanks very much.
I'll be Kerry, so hopefully I can deliver to her standard and I won't disappoint too much. So community engagement, where have we been so far this year? So we've been all over Essex and even crossing borders at times, as you can see on the left. We've been to the University of Essex Sustainability Awareness Week. So we had a stall there for a couple of days last week. We've also been to the Manifesto for Essex Youth Summit. So that was at First Sight in Colchester, where we've been invited back a couple of years now. Upcoming events, so the big one, hopefully, I'll be seeing a few of you at the Climate Summit next week at the Central Baptist Church. But I know we're a bit cut for time, so the next slide, please. As always, our Climate Czar, Councillor Peter Shapiro, has been really busy, going all over the county. So you can see some of kind of his on-site shots. He's been to the recycling centres and some property development sites in Canvey Island, South Woodham Ferrers and Malden. He's been joining us at some of our events, promoting the Carbon Cutting Essex app, which I'll talk about further in a moment, and also the first local nature recovery strategy meeting. Next slide, please. So some of the other projects that we've been working on, so the Essex Climate Focus Area, we've been working on our stakeholder toolkit for that. We've also been recently shortlisted for an LGC award in the Future Places category that we're going to be presenting next month. The Essex Forest Initiative, Dave's already touched on that, but it's kind of going from strength to strength. We've been helping with the communications for that, including the Facebook page. Waste strategy for Essex, already been touched on. The water strategy, which is really close now, ready to go, and you'll hear more about that if you're there on Wednesday. The climate animations, so some of you might know we're updating our climate advice packs, and the animations are kind of just bringing them to life a bit to help with those. The next slide, please. So our Carbon Cutting Essex app, so there's been quite a big drive on promoting the app over the past year. As you can see, 284 days since launch, so it's been just over 9 months. And we've got 872 registrations, so we're kind of creeping up to that 1,000 number. A lot of the kind of different graphics you can see on the screen now are kind of talking about the different registrations. So you can see spikes at different days. You can also see on the top right, I know it's quite hard to make out on the presentation, but the breakdown by district. So it's a really good tool that we actually get with the app. We have a really good breakdown of where people are downloading, who's downloading, kind of age categories, and also what people are doing on the app. So we're seeing we're getting some really good engagement. It's not just people kind of downloading an event because we've kind of collared them and asked them to scan a QR code. People are actually still kind of continuing to engage. And yeah, we're doing really well on that. And we're hoping to get to, I believe, 1,500 by September, so in 6 months' time. And yeah, so really continuing with the app, and it's going well. Next slide, please. And finally, our carbon literacy training. So we've been doing the training for I think nearly 2 years now, and we've got what I think is quite an impressive number, over 335 carbon literacy accredited employees at Essex County Council, and that's not just people in kind of the environment and climate action space. That's from across the council. We're continuously tracking what functions are completing the training, who we need to target. What functions kind of could do with a bit more support in getting employees accredited, because we know it's important throughout the council, not just kind of in certain areas. As those of you who have done the training, you'll see that you'll know that we've part of the training is completing a pledge. One of the pledges that came from it was someone wanted to create the climate network, and that this year has this month, has got its first anniversary, and we've already got over 200 members in the network, and that we've had some really good events come from that. We received our bronze award last year, and now we're working on our silver award. Thank you.
Thanks, Liam. Very impressive, as they all are. Excellent. Thank you very much. Great stuff. Loretta, I think you're doing just transition and green economy. Thanks very much.
I am indeed. Thanks so much. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk through the 3 schemes of work that we've been working on with the commissioners that really came out of that inception. We are the youngest of the SIG groups, so we've been on a bit of a pilot year for the last year. So our Green Entrepreneurs Programme was a pilot that we ran in this financial year, which was really successful. It was aimed at 18 to 30-year-olds, really kind of drawing up what the startup community was going to need in terms of green businesses, and trying to link up with some of that functionality of other functions that we have, as well as some of that within the LEP or the local enterprise partnership functionality around the growth hub. So we had 3 winners last year from this particular programme, which won £5,000 worth of seed funding. As I say, this was aimed at 18 to 30-year-olds. It's designed to support those new and novice green entrepreneurs with structured workshops, learning and mentorship. And experienced tutors from across industries, so everything from marketing and sustainable business to writing your business plan to looking at where you can go for seed funding, was incorporated into that programme. What was clear that came out of this learning was that lots of the individuals who were on that programme are obviously in full-time work and couldn't necessarily end all the time due to their responsibilities or commitments. So we're going to roll this programme out, scale it up this year, have a longer programme of activity. We've got the procurement completed, so we've got the facilitators on board for that. And equally, what was quite aware to us was that it's not just 18 to 30-year-olds that are interested in this type of support. So we've had a number of businesses that reached out to us that wanted to apply for this, who were looking to transition their particular businesses. And we've been supporting those businesses anyway, even though they weren't eligible for this particular programme. And what's really successful from that is that one of those businesses has now gone on to receive UKRI funding. And we've had those 2 businesses that approached us, both one were the winners and the runner-up of the Get Set Grow programme recently with our district and borough partners in Brentwood and Rochford, which is huge for us in terms of the support and understanding how we could take that learning and scale that up. So we'll be delivering the next cohort of this in the summer, and having a number of sprints for individuals to pitch for that seed funding. So someone might not be ready by a particular first sprint, or they might apply and be unsuccessful, but they'll be able to apply for some of that seed funding going forward, and they can apply twice, a little bit like the Innovate UK funding for businesses. Next slide, please. So this is a huge piece of work that I think has been really the heart of what the team have been doing internally, and huge kudos to Matt Miller in my team, who's really taken the bull by the horns for this piece of work. So This is a green business support and accreditation scheme, which takes all of that fantastic work that's in the business support pack and really turns that into some digestible information and templates for businesses to really handhold them through thinking about sustainability. So we know that 51% of all business emissions are driven by SME sector, but when we look at very recent data that's come out from our SMEs, 38% of them don't understand how to calculate their carbon emissions. 26% do, the rest are unsure. They think they do in some way, shape or form. But what's more worrying is that only 25% of our business community think that it's a positive impact to change for them in terms of viability and in terms of their economic growth potential. And we know that this is the greatest economic opportunity. So we're creating that self-serve material. It's a lot of podcast video material. We've been working with a company called Responsible Futures to create that content. And that's going to be launched. A soft launch of stuff between March and May, obviously with elections coming up, and we've equally got some support, one-to-one support for 20 businesses to get them ready for this. So in terms of having leaner processes and practices to start thinking about whether they have the time, the expertise, etc., to start thinking about changing their processes and practices. And we will be coming to all of the SIG groups in due course to think about how we join that up as knowledge experts and expertise. So we will want to draw that expertise out. Jason, I can see, is laughing because we've already been on his ear about what's coming in terms of the waste sector. So watch this space for that, and we will obviously be sharing in due course when everything's live on the website. Next slide, please. So this is our youth movement, We Rise, which is down in Canvey Island at the moment. Great job done by the skills team and the levelling up team, and really joining up work here across not only ECC, but across directorates and across SIGs around this is where I think we've had probably the biggest impact in terms of that just transition piece for some of our most isolated communities. So the We Rise movement is aimed at young people. It's a real youth movement which came out of Jacqueline's suggestion around Shujaz in Kenya and Tanzania. And we have got a real group of August young people who are really passionate about not only improving their life chances, but equally about environment and what the opportunities are. So we are running a number of programs and activity coming up, looking at the green tech skills of the future with a company called Decrypt Hut that provides a physical interactive space for young people to think about how green digital careers maybe for them. So we're running a number of workshops with those young people. It's all co-designed. They're going to be doing all of the peer-to-peer engagement around that. And what's fantastic for us is that we've got our own apprentice internally and one of our young interns who are really going to be championing this going forward. So yes, watch this space. We may well be asking for you to amplify. Kerry, I'm looking at you as well. But in terms of the big ideas going forward, we've been very constrained because of all of the LEP functionalities that are coming in to county level, obviously, with CELEP no longer going to be in its current format. So I think that provides us with great opportunities. But I know that the Commission are really interested in how we can do a lot more of that just transition, cross-collaborative working with the other SIGs. We've got a new member of staff working in our team in the next few weeks. She comes from an academic background working at university. So we're hoping that she will take the ball by the horns, as I say, and really scale up a lot of that work around levelling up and the just transition and what we can do to be greater than the sum of our parts.
Brilliant. Thanks very much indeed, Loretta. That's excellent. Good summary at the end there as well. Great stuff. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for those presentations. A few minutes for questions, clarifications, and then I will come back. I think we can drop out the presentation, for the moment. Any questions or clarifications from colleagues on the Commission? So Peter first and then Matt second. Peter Davey.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for the amazing update and the initial outcomes of all your initiatives, which are absolutely amazing. A couple of points. If I focus first on the waste presentation, specifically plastics, I'm a bit bemused that in Brentwood, where I am based, you cannot recycle soft plastic, an example of which is all the dry cleaning covers that come with your suits and everything else. And I find that a bit odd, so understanding that would be helpful. And on the built environment, Graham, I understand totally there's a phased transition going on to carbon neutrality, dependent upon the borough, district, or city council, but not the national legislation as we speak. And I've been to two big developments, one in Blossom's Park, Mount Essing, and the other one in Bellway, Malden. And sadly, phase one of Blossom's Park is traditional build, as they define it. And they've been pressured, obviously, by the Borough Council that phase two, when it starts, will be heat pump inclusive, which is a frustration. And then you go to Bellway Homes, and they're referring to phase four, because it's a huge development. And they're going to introduce triple glazing, which is a first I've never heard of. So it's really clarity on those 2 points from those two leads. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Jason, can you do the soft plastics bit?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, sorry, everybody can hear me. Yeah, we recognise that there is an inconsistency in approach across the county, and that's one of the things that the strategy is really trying to deal with. So what we have in terms of ambition within that strategy is to have greater consistency operating throughout Essex in terms of the range of materials that are being collected. So this does take time. There does need to be obviously the necessary arrangements put in place in terms of procurement activity to secure the outlets for these materials. But the ambition within or target within the strategy is to actually have a comprehensive standard range of materials collected from all households by 2026 for core materials, and then adding the flexible plastics by 2027. And that's just recognising the fact that the market for flexible plastics is not as developed as some of the other materials. So although I can't say that we're going to get this sold next week, we do have that target that by 2027, all households within Essex will have the full range of materials. So we will no longer have this inconsistent approach operating throughout the county.
Thank you.
Lovely, thanks very much. Graham, can you say anything about, it might be a bit specific, it might be a similar kind of thing about phasing, but I suppose the point is that as we make good progress, we're going to be pointing at areas in all of the SIGs where we're not. And the question is, are they on a journey as well, or are these sort of ways for people to dodge and dive and escape doing the right thing?
So yes, I'll pick that up. Thanks, Peter and Joel. So the focus for us, Peter, is really to sort of set the rules locally. So I mentioned two local authorities that are very much, Uttlesford have changed their standards in terms of energy provision of new homes. So they've embedded it in their new plan, which is now in the public domain. Chelmsford will be doing that very, very shortly, if not certainly next month. So the aim really is to get everybody, each of the local authorities, with their review of their local plan to set the new energy performance standards. I know your new director of planning who's arriving shortly. She will very much be in that mode and mindset and understands the context. So that will be really helpful in relation to resetting Brentwood's review. I think once you've established the local policies or the standards, then it becomes much easier to have those conversations with developers, because the evidence, as I presented, shows that legally we can, the viability is virtually the same, and actually the policy position is clear. And what we do know, working with the developers within Essex, is a pan-Essex approach to this just makes it so much easier. So if Bellway turn up in Braintree, Chelmsford, Colchester, Uttlesford, wherever they turn up, they know what the rules are, they know what the expectation is. And clearly we are setting a higher standard than is happening at a national level. So I think it's all about the future, Peter. So I know Brentwood are about to commence, or they're in the process of reviewing the plan. The more that you can support that in terms of addressing the sort of climate change considerations in that, the better.
Thanks,
Good. And the general kind of strategic point is that we're seeing the jigsaw pieces going into the jigsaw geographically, and if we've got exemplars where one place like Uttlesford is doing it and Chelmsford is about to, then we can keep pointing at the exemplars and try to drive the rising tide to raise all ships kind of model. A bit of a cliche there, but I think it probably works when you're thinking like this. So it helps to know where there's good things to point at and say bad stuff in the place where I am is kind of unacceptable, and therefore we should be kind of pushing up. So a really good point. Thank you for that. Matt, you had a question.
Thanks everyone for those really good updates. I want to zoom into the first section that Dave covered with NFM. I'm really pleased that DEFRA and the EA have managed to put 91k into there. And as Jeremy from Essex Wildlife Trust said in the chat, we've also put £2 million plus into the beneficial use of dredgings on the Blackwater estuary. So that's all moving well. But it was just a flag that we haven't forgotten all of the people that bid for this money that run successful, and we're currently working on ways to support them moving forward with other funding streams, other flood risk funding streams, as well as our own focus, for example, upstream with Chelmsford, where the big flood scheme is going to be coming at some point. We're trying to open up catchment-based environmental improvements that have a flood risk benefit as well. So basically, you know, that's kind of the tip of the iceberg, really, those amazing projects. And I'll share some more detail with people in the coming weeks, but of how we're trying to access and get some more money out there to allow people to do good stuff for the environment that has a flood risk benefit in those places that we need it around the county, really.
Perfect. Thanks very much. That's really helpful, Matt. Thank you. Dave, you've got a comment.
It was just to follow up from Matt. I messaged you in the chat offline, and it happens to be about Chelmsford upstream NFM, Matt. So that'd be great if we could pick that up separately. But also, I wanted to go back to the question that you asked at the start, Jules, about what you think our main action is for the year. I don't know, I've probably had a little bit longer than everybody else. Hopefully it's worth the wait, but we had a little think, and our climate action adaptation and mitigation goal is probably to look at developing larger scale funding bids with our partners to help improve and expand upon the sort of work we're doing in the natural green infrastructure environment, and things like our capital program that help us deliver that. So that would be our main focus for the year upcoming.
Brilliant. That's very helpful. Thank you. And Matt, thank you. There's a really good point there about people bidding for schemes. If you're unsuccessful, that we're still helping them. It's not that they've wasted their effort in putting it all together. It's saying good work has been done here. It's all about kind of phasing. It's a kind of wait list almost to it, and that we're helping others who haven't been successful in the first round. And the idea of taking action at a geographic level, catchments, watersheds, regions, districts, whatever, it's been a central part of our kind of thinking on this commission, is to say that's the way that we're going to get scaling up. Ultimately, we have to do this for the whole planet, but we're starting on kind of workable areas, which is a good way of thinking of it. I'll come to the other SIG leads when we get to the final session, because I don't want to keep our visiting speakers waiting for the next bit. The lead on from surface water and natural flood management into water shortages is a good kind of setup for the next bit. So thank you again to all of the SIG presenters. That was superb. It's really good to hear this range of action that's being taken, that is progressive, innovative, ahead of the field, pushing into kind of new areas for the county. And I think we should rightly be proud of it. I mean, the Canby Island work is fantastic. I mean, that's absolutely brilliant, and I'm sure we'll be making as much of these as we can in terms of publicity, but it's them as exemplars that I think is a key for us. Okay, so let's make a shift in slight pivot then for the meeting into kind of part two, which is the thematic part. And although we've just about been affected, all of us, by surface water flow, surface water retention, flow from fields into roads, an excess of water in the last months, certainly, or last 6 weeks or so. I think we move into a shift, and Lucy will set the scene for us in just a moment. Thank you, Lucy, for doing this, about our water challenge, which is actually about shortages in the first instance, and about how we start to address all of that. So we've got 3 presentations. Lucy's going to give us the overview. Then we're going to hear from Jeff Dash from Anglian Water, and then Helen Dangerfield from the Essex Rivers hub to give us 3 different perspectives on this, and a reminder that I suppose, I mean, it's not just about shortages, it's about too much water in the wrong places. That it's extremes of supply of environmental and ecosystem services that is our challenge as we go forward. The things we want at the wrong times and in the wrong amounts, or just not available. So that's kind of part of the picture. Lucy, you've got a presentation, presumably.
Yes, I do. Yes, hello.
Louise, you're going to fling it up for us.
I am going to share my screen.
Oh, you're going to do it. Okay, that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
So I will lose everybody because I'll
Yeah.
have my presentation mode.
Yeah.
I do have an audio to share at the end, so hopefully that will work. Just shout if it doesn't.
Lovely,
so-
that's great. So away you go then. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. So hi, everybody. My name's Lucy Shepherd and I work for the Climate Adaptation and Mitigation team at Essex. We know that Essex is in a severely water-stressed area, and we've actually been designated in that category since 2007. So that's 17 years, but water just hasn't really been given a focus against things like waste, energy, transport, but it is so vital for people, for biodiversity, economic growth. So, you know, the point is that we have to start building water into our plans and business as usual to protect it and everything that it supports. So I'm here to talk to you about the challenges that we are facing here in Essex, and we've also been working with Water Resources East, one of our regional planning, water planning groups, to create the first Essex water strategy. So I will do some slides on that as well for you. So climate change and what it means for water. Don't let these flood maps fool you. This is focusing on Malden, and the left-hand side is our kind of fluvial and tidal risk. Right-hand side is surface water risk. But when you look at the climate projections, actually by 2070, our average winter precipitation, although it's up by 35%, the summer precipitation is due to decrease by up to 47%. And along with that, when it does rain, the increase in intensity is due to be about 25%. So if you look at these maps, you can see again on the right-hand side that, you know, when it rains, we're unlikely to see this level of flooding at that scale. It will be locally isolated depending where the rain falls, but there is massive opportunity for us to hold water in our environment, hold on to it so that we have it when we need it, you know, store it when we have too much, so that we can use it when we have too little. So due to that stress from climate change on our water, and due to projected growth, housing, you know, people growth, and our environment needs, we are in a water deficit in Essex. The Water Resources East have said that the overall shortage in the East, so public water supply and other abstractions for industry or farming, are totaling at around 800 megalitres per day by 2050. So that's a third of our current usage. And you can see here a megalitre is a lot of water. It's 1 million litres cube, measuring 10 metres on all sides. So 800 megalitres every single day. That is such a big volume of water to find. You'll hear from Jeff from Anglian Water after my presentation today, so I'll leave him to explain what water companies are doing about their deficits and overall, you know, working on the regional plans. But we've worked together with all of our 4 water companies to work out that we have a deficit of around 147.5 megalitres in Essex by 2050. And it's not just water supply for public water supply for the public water out of our taps. We have a lot of abstractors for commercial and farming. And if you look at the diagram or the picture on the right-hand side, this shows you that for agriculture in the region, if we want to leave enough water in our environment for, you know, for environment to not just survive, but to thrive, then we need to reduce our abstraction, leave more water in that environment. And our farmers are facing possible abstraction caps over 60%. To allow that to happen, which will change, you know, what we see growing in our field, it will have massive impacts on that sector. So again, across the board, we all just need to be thinking more about water, not just water companies, but other industries, you know, and ourselves. Sadly, it's not just water quality, water supply that's the problem, it's water quality as well, as a lot of you will know. So in Essex, we actually have below average water quality compared to the rest of England. We only have 5 out of our 91 water bodies that are currently at good status, and 18 of them are at poor status. So the government target is for 75% of all water bodies to be at good status as soon as possible. So we're a long way off that in Essex. And when we looked at the Environment Agency data, we can see that the reasons, you know, the known reasons for not achieving good status are about a third water industry caused quality problems, about a third agricultural runoff, and about a third is just our urban environment, built environment runoff, and transport runoff. So, you know, we need to look at, you know, when we build development, we are using sustainable drainage systems, we're using green infrastructure in order to capture that runoff and treat it for water quality, as well as flood benefits, as well as carbon capture, amenity, etc. So water management is a really difficult jigsaw to put together, and we have a massive challenge in Essex. I think we are very unique that we have 4 different water companies with various different water resource management zones in Essex. When you throw into that mix that we also have 3 flood and coastal committees, 12 local planning authorities, 5 different catchment partnerships, it's a lot of conversations to have, but we absolutely have to start collaborating more. We have to start working together, having shared aims. And this is something that we draw out in the Essex Water Strategy, you know, and we want to see, you know, everybody, you know, having plans and strategies that support us using less water, changing land use for water, and thinking about alternative future supply. But while this kind of presents one challenge, it's also a massive opportunity for us. If we can collaborate, if we can seek out, you know, multiple benefits in all of our work, then potentially, you know, there is a lot of potential there for working with all those partners. Just a quick, we did an Essex residents panel survey. And as I said, considering we have been severely water stressed since 2007, it's really a surprise to see that the public, 84% of people didn't know that Essex was in a seriously water stressed area. And 95% of people were unaware that there is a government target to reduce public water use by 20% by 2038 as well. But at the top there, people are concerned. The pollution of rivers actually increased by 30% as an Essex resident's top environmental concern. But people just felt, 58% of people felt they just didn't know about the water shortage problem because they weren't informed. They just didn't have that information. So the water strategy for Essex, this is due to launch next Wednesday at our water summit. So sorry if some of you there, you will see these slides, some of these slides again. But the water strategy document itself makes 30 recommendations, which I'll come on to in a second, and they are multi-sector. You know, yes, some organisations should be leading, but it all depends on others supporting those themes as well, all about collaboration. We also have a really exciting engagement campaign, which is all focused on a new website called Essex Water Your Future, which I'll give you a quick demo of in a second. And that's all about getting everybody up to a level of understanding about these water challenges that we're facing, and the integrated kind of network of you know, people and that work on water and how complex it can be, and simplifying that so that we can all be more water literate. And we're actually working with an Ofwat funded water literacy development group as well. So because of this work we've been doing on the engagement site, we're working on this program of a water literacy rollout, very similar to the carbon literacy training rollout. And finally, you know, through this work, we have had to wade through millions of data points, and literally millions of data points, which the water companies publish on their projections for water resources management. Environment Agency data, it's all at various different scales, published in incomprehensible tables. So we have, with our intelligence teams at Essex, published a much more accessible Power BI storyboard, so that people can have a look at leakage targets, where water's imported from, how much water's imported, and other key stats like that on our Essex Open Data portal. So our water strategy does make, as I said, the 30 recommendations. These are cross-sector recommendations for water companies, planning authorities, highways, and others. The themes are across those recommendations are consistent. They are about reducing demand, changing land use, and looking at our alternative supply options. Every single one of those is linked to existing government targets and requirements, either in the Environment Act or in the Plan for Water. And they do stress the need for that kind of cross-sector collaboration, looking at changing land use and building nature-based solutions so we can achieve those multiple benefits. And it's about building water, building water into all of our existing statutory activities and plans, and talking, like I said, building water into all of our climate adaptation communications and projects and strategies. So just as some examples of things we've done here, in our new highways decarbonisation plan, we consider water. Through work with procurement, all of our suppliers now have to look at water in their sustainability charter. We're working with Essex and Suffolk Water to do some monitor some behaviour change on our dual flush systems. And there will be, the government are working on further incentives. So, everybody having a look at the water strategy for Essex, getting a head start, will put them in good stead for when those incentives may become available. So my final slide is just a 1-minute demo on the new Essex Water Your Future website. So I do hope that the sound will work. It should do. Please shout out loud if it doesn't, but I'll leave you with this and I'll be back in 1 minute.
Understanding the water challenges for Essex and how they are managed is not easy. We've developed the Essex Water Your Future website with the Young Essex Assembly to help. Move around the online world to find out more about how things like climate change and human influence are affecting our water. Click on the icons to learn how desalination, the actions you take at home, and nature recovery are all part of the solution. You can find short videos and read case studies about projects already going on. Start exploring to learn how we can work together in Essex for clean and plentiful water.
Okay, so I should just add that that's a project we've worked really closely on with the Young Essex Assembly. So we went with some early visions of how the website might look, and they scribbled all over them and gave us some ideas on the graphic and what they wanted to see there. And we hope to kind of roll that out in the schools' newsletters and work with eco schools on tying it into the curriculum so we can get it out as part of education as well. Thank you.
Super, lovely. Thank you very much, Lucy. Brilliant, good setup. So if you could come out of sharing your screen, presumably. And Jeff, I think we've got lined up to come in to talk about the public water supply focus. Yep, there you are. Are you doing the slides yourself, or is Louis doing them?
I'm going to try. Can you see
right,
those?
Good. Yeah, excellent. Yes, we got it. Yeah, lovely. All right, over to you for a few minutes then. Yep.
Great. Thanks, Jules. Yeah, so I'm Jeff Darch. I'm the head of supply demand strategy at Anglian Water, and thanks for the invitation to come along this morning and talk about this. And Lucy's done a great job of sort of teeing up my presentation. So we supply water to around 300,000 people in the northern part of Essex. We supply from a combination of the Chalk Aquifer and also by abstracting water from the River Colne in Colchester into Ardleigh Reservoir. So every 5 years, we have to produce something called a water resources management plan. And the most recent one is the picture of that is on the front there. This plan is currently about to be submitted in sort of final draft form to DEFRA, and then we'll await instruction from the Secretary of State in terms of signing that off. And all water companies are going through this kind of process at the moment. So the water resource plan looks forward 25 years. It looks to balance supplies and demands across that period, and really looks at the kind of solutions that we kind of have to include to manage that. Now, Essex is a small but important part of our supply area. As you can see, the full supply area there on the map. We have mainly two water resource zones that supply Essex, what we call Essex Central, which covers the Earls Colne and Halstead area, and then the much larger Essex South zone, which covers Colchester and Braintree in particular. Now, as Lucy's alluded to, our resources are under significant pressure going forward. We've got significant levels of growth expected within the Essex area, but also we've got changes in our abstraction licenses, particularly from groundwater. And at the same time, our reservoir will be impacted by climate change and the need to achieve enhanced drought resilience. And all of that means that we have a pretty stark challenge over the next 25 years in Essex, where the availability of water is going to decline quite sharply at the same time that population is increasing. So how are we going to manage that? Well, we have a twin track strategy. On one hand, we are trying to reduce the level of demand. And on the other hand, we're looking at how we increase supplies. So on the demand side, this is really kind of underpinned by smart metering. And we've already started rolling out smart meters in Essex, in the Colchester area. And they're going to really help us work with customers to understand how we can better reduce water, particularly unintended consumptions, but alongside that, efficiencies as well. We're also going to move at some point in the period, the next asset management period, so from 2025 onwards, to compulsory metering. So everyone will actually pay on the basis of a measured charge, rather than on the basis of rateable value, which is how unmeasured customers pay at present time. We will obviously continue to assist vulnerable customers through a range of tariffs that we have available. We're also implementing non-household demand management measures. So non-household demand forms around about 30% of overall demand. It's historically been a sort of sector that's been more inefficient with the use of water, and that's something that we're very much kind of focusing on going forward. And obviously that involves working with water retailers and the end use customers themselves. And the final element of this is reducing water on our own network. We have a very large network, something like 35,000 kilometres of water mains. We need to do our part to reduce losses on that too. We're also investing to ensure resilient supplies going forward. And one of the major ways that we're doing that at the present time is laying a new set of interconnectors that are actually extending to Colchester all the way from the north of Lincolnshire. And that's helping us to balance available resource with areas that are drier. But going forward, we've got other things that we need to do. We're investing in new reservoirs, we're investing in new interconnectors, and we're also have started work on a new water reuse facility in Colchester, where we're going to use recycled water and pump that into Ardley Reservoir to increase the reliability of the yield of that resource. And in the long term, we may need to look at desalination plants as well. And there's a site in Essex that may be suitable for that. So some big challenges going forward. But you know, the WMP really kind of sets out how we're going to address that and ensure that Essex continues to benefit from the best quality water. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Just in that water connector slide, the pink ones were the ones in place already, were they? Is that because it's 19 and the green is what's planned for the next phase? Is that correct?
Yeah, so the pink ones, they're labeled 19 because they came out of our 2019 water resources management plan. So they're being laid at the present time. And then the green ones are the ones we've identified in the new water resource management plan. So they'll start to be laid in 2025 and will be in the ground by around about 2032.
Right.
So,
okay. Because there wasn't
yeah.
a target for that. So you would expect that all to be done by 2032.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very helpful. Thanks very much, Nick. Thank you. That's super. And so getting on to hold the questions. We'll come to them collectively, Jackie and Jarmo, if you don't mind. And I'll just ask Helen to talk about the catchment partnerships, because that's the way of kind of connecting up from the individual consumer of water level and the collective supply to thinking about communities and landowners and rivers. So Helen, over to you. Okay, so we've just frozen up a bit. Helen, are you off mute? Louise, plan B, maybe.
Looks like we might have lost Helen.
Just lost Helen there. Yeah, she was right there a moment ago.
She was there, yes. Helen, are you there? Oh, there she is. She's back.
All right, good.
Hello,
Well
everyone.
done,
I think my screen just froze. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we've got you and can see the screen. Thanks, Helen. Super. Fire away.
Okay, thank you for inviting me today. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm going to talk a bit about the Essex Rivers Hub, which is part of the catchment-based approach. I've sent some slides around in advance with some examples of some of the projects that we're doing, so you'll have seen those in advance. And I've got some additional slides actually hot off the press about some of our engagement work. So I am the director of the Essex and Suffolk Rivers Trust, who hosts the Catchment Partnership, which I'll come on and describe. It's a wide range of catchment partners that we have. So we can move to the next slide. Sorry, just a little bit of freezing going on. And catchment partnerships exist across the country, and we're the combined Essex catchment partnership in the Essex Rivers Hub. You can find out more on our website, which has just been revamped actually, and it will continue to be updated with new news. But essentially we cover all of the Essex rivers that flow out into the North Sea, so not those that flow into the Thames area, which is covered by a separate partnership on the west of the county, but all of those rivers on the east that flow into the North Sea. And we're here to promote catchment scale planning and to work together to deliver projects which are going to help deliver the targets, some of which are outlined in the Essex Water Management Strategy, and indeed Essex County Council are one of our key partners within the Essex Rivers Hub. So I just wanted to talk a bit about our approach to climate resilience, ideas taken from Syria's guide on natural flood management. So really 4 key areas that we're working on in terms of our planning. Firstly, to protect what's currently working well in the landscape and functioning, restoring, if we can, those features which help the source of the problems to do with our extremes in weather and the natural processes in response. If we can't protect or restore, we're in a situation where it's really difficult to see how we might be able to restore natural processes. We might be able to mimic natural processes, so install things which could help, particularly with flood risk. And then finally engage with people who are living and working within the catchment to encourage local care and custodianship. So just a few examples of the sorts of work we're doing. Fiddler's Hill in the Colne catchment, just close to the A12 at Fordham. This is a really collaborative project with a number of partners involved. You can see the logos at the bottom. There's already good degree of natural flooding on the more extreme or the high flow events. So you can see in the photograph on the left, this aerial photograph shows that water does come out of bank, but actually there's huge potential to improve the extent of that, the duration with which water sits on the floodplain, helping to slow flow and reduce flood risk downstream, and the diversity of the sorts of habitats that we could see on the floodplain. So we're hoping that this project will be the start of something wider that we can continue to work downstream with other landowners on once we've established this demonstration. We're hoping if we're able to raise the money this year to construct, there's a planning application in at the moment. The project is being completed through detailed design, and it's really exciting to see this coming to fruition if we're able to establish the funding. In terms of mimicking, we've seen a few pictures of leaky dams already today, but this is example in the Lair Brook catchment. We're doing some work with Essex and Suffolk Water this year to go back and see how successful these schemes have been since they were installed in 2021. But essentially, we're trying to mimic what nature would have done previously, which is to slow flow through things like tree falls and so on. So you can see the locations that leaky dams were installed. And just to give an example of them being installed in practice, they do what they say on the tin, which is to allow low flow to pass underneath the leaky dam and leak through it essentially, but hold back floodwaters. So we'll be looking at more of these sorts of schemes throughout. Another example of where we're taking stuff out rather than putting stuff in is the Essex Fish Migration Roadmap, where we're trying to remove barriers to sediment and water passage, as well as improve things for fish populations. The main and sort of last thing I wanted to talk about today was perhaps our biggest programme coming up in the next few years, which is Essex River Watch. And as Lucy said in her presentation, there's the top concern in the Essex resident survey was about water quality, and this includes things which are related to climate change to do with low flows, so dissolved oxygen levels, temperature of water, and the impact of high extreme events with surface runoff and chemicals that come into the system, as well as sewage pollution. So in 2021, 23% of Essex residents surveyed put this as their top concern. By 2023, that was 53%. So the Essex Rivers Hub has really taken this on board and developed a citizen science project where people can begin to get involved in surveying their local rivers. So alongside the concern, we've had a large increase in numbers of people contacting us who want to get involved with doing something to help. How can they take care of their local watercourse, and what can they do to start to understand a bit more about what's happening locally to them. So we set up the Citizen Science Project a year ago. We're in a really good position with it. We've already agreed with the subgroup the form that the survey takes. This is intended to be open to everybody, so young people, local residents, farming community, wide range of people who want to get involved with looking at their local river system. We already have the protocols and the training and the photographic demonstrators on the left-hand side that you can see there. And we have the online platform where people can upload their results and then see how their results are contributing to a bigger picture across Essex. It can either be done with the written form, or we also have a remote app that we've set up and that can be used on smartphones. And crucially, we've beta tested this already. So we are really ready to go. We've got 50 sets of kit to do the water quality testing elements of the project. You don't actually have to do that. You can do just general ecosystem observations without doing the water quality element of it. But our intention is to support local community groups such as the Hadley Environment Action Team, who've been really supportive with this project in terms of beta testing and making sure it works across a wide range of people involved with that group. So what we're really keen to do now is help fund the project. So the next step, the Essex County Council have been fantastic in supporting us with, is setting up a big give campaign, which will go live in April. And this is an opportunity for the public to pledge their support, as well as the support we've already received from Essex County Council and from Essex Waterways in getting set up. We're hoping that the public campaign will then unlock match funding through this big give, totaling 10,000, which will really help us go a long way towards getting local training groups, local citizen science groups set up, and really starting to support people who've come to us wanting to do more. We'll be in a really good position to roll this out across Essex.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Thanks very much. Presumably that's the end. Yeah. Okay, lovely. Great. Okay. I was just kind of surprised, or not sure what you're doing with the borders. So the two parts of Essex that got bathing water quality successes were both on the Stour at Manningtree and at Sudbury. And although the Sudbury side is kind of, driven from the Suffolk side, half the river's in Essex, but you don't do the Stour. So that means there are no successes in Essex because you're kind of not looking at the Stour. Is there a reason for stopping at that point, or is somebody else?
No, we are covering the Stour, and actually that needs to be made clearer.
Okay,
we have been covering it from the Suffolk side. Is that the map that you saw at the beginning?
The map.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right.
So
okay,
that's probably something we need to amend on the Essex Rivers Hub, actually. Thank you for that feedback. But we are covering with the Stour and from the Suffolk side as well.
Yeah, good. Because I mean, there were 3 successes in the whole of Greater East Anglia, 1 in Cambridge and the 2 on the Stour, and no others, none in Norfolk, none in the kind of rest of Essex. And I think we should be making something. Both of those were driven by citizen science projects of water quality analysis.
Yeah,
it should be said as well.
Yeah, I think maybe it would be nice to put something on our website about those successes and
please do.
The Essex River Watch campaign.
Yeah, I mean, they're both those communities are super proud of what they've achieved. So great stuff. Good. All right. Thank you very much. Let's go back to questions. Yarima, I know you've got to dash off, so you were at the top of the list, so we'll go to you first and then Jackie second.
That's very kind. Thank you. Just a question for Jeff. So if there's the prospect of a desalination plant being built, is there any plan for decarbonizing it?
Yes, there is. This is something that we're looking at generally across the desalination plants that we might have coming forward. So we're looking at taking excess wind power, but we're also looking at co-location with things like hydrogen production, which is obviously one of the drivers of desalination generally within the region, particularly in the north of our region. So it is very much part of our thinking. It's not a problem that's been cracked worldwide yet, but it's something that we'd like to strive for within our region.
Okay, I think I would probably want to push you a little bit harder, Jeff. You don't need to respond at this point, but from a we'd like to do this, I think we should be saying our priority would be if there were big kit being installed in the county that it should be driven by renewables and not by fossil fuels for the electricity, because that's the business we're in, is getting us across to renewables. And if it hasn't been done before, that's no reason for not doing it. So I kind of like us to be not saying we'd like to do this, but we should be saying our target is to do this entirely by renewables. Brackets, even though that's quite difficult.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, Jules, we are going to be a net zero operational company by 2030, so we would be buying green grid electricity. So this will be powered by renewable sources. What I was talking about was direct use of renewables.
Yes, yeah, no, understood.
Rather than grid purchase.
Yeah. Okay, very good, excellent, lovely, good question, Jeremiah. Jackie.
I have two questions. They're sort of interlinked. So the first one is, what kind of smart metering do you have in place already? So that'll be one thing. So how much of your, how much of your customer base has got smart meters? But the second one comes back to the desal as well. And it's really to think about, we've talked a lot about the circular economy across Essex. And one of the things that I'm very keen to see, and I went to visit a desal plant when I was out in Dubai, is the use of activated filter media using glass, recycled coloured glass. So the technology comes out of Scotland, it's used at scale in Europe. And not only does it actually get you a long way in the desal process with very, very little energy, but it also means that there's an entire new value-added waste stream that we could generate within the county, which I think could be a useful business proposition. And I would be more than happy to sort of take this offline, but I think that kind of building desal in to a circular economy would be fantastic if we could do that. So just a point. But on the smart metering, I'm very curious about what kind of coverage you've got already.
Yeah, thanks so much for the questions, Jackie. Yeah, so smart metering. So we've got rollout in Essex at the moment, in Colchester. We're going to be fully smart metered as a company by 2030. So we'll be the first company to get there. And that will obviously include Essex as well. Smart meters are providing a lot of benefits for us and our customers. We're absolutely convinced that they're the thing that's going to get us to the next level of kind of water saving. And we know that's happening already. Our smart meter customers are already using less than 120 litres per head per day, which is well below the average. And there's a lot more we can do to encourage, tying in things like our water efficiency messages. But just to give you some stats on this, so when we connect smart meters, 10% of properties have what we call a continuous flow. In other words, a leak within the property, and that's unintended consumption, typically from cisterns, toilet cisterns, that can be eliminated quickly. And we're also seeing a breakout rate of about 4 to 5% per year. So even if you fix that initial set of leaks, then you do get these leaks occurring on a regular basis. And of course, the difference now is that we can inform customers of those leaks within days. And obviously, if there's a major leak, we will ring them up. Whereas previously, with the visual read that was read once every 6 or 12 months, that leak would run for a long time. So we're seeing some fantastic benefits from smart meters, and very happy to talk to this group or others about what we're seeing again. On the desalination point, yeah, it's a really interesting one. In fact, I've just come back from a few days in Spain, where I've been looking at desalination plants on the Mediterranean coast with some colleagues. And we're very interested in exploring this kind of circular economy idea, both in terms of the kind of filter media that's used, and typically a form of granular activated carbon would be used, but I'd certainly like to discuss your Dubai experiences with the glass. That sounds very intriguing. But more generally, looking at kind of what is done with brine waste. And we're aware of one plant that's being proposed in Western Australia, where they're actually looking at how they can use the brine as an input to an industrial process. That sounds very, very interesting. So yeah, it's very much kind of part of the thinking, and what we've been keen to do in our planning is not to rush to desalination. If we do need to go to desalination, we're not going to put a spade in the ground on this until at least 2030. So we've got the next 4 or 5 years to really think through what does a 21st century desal plant look like for our region, on energy, on how we deal with the waste streams and so on. So yeah, Jackie, I'd love to pick that up with you afterwards. Yeah, great, thanks.
Fantastic, good questions. Yeah, mold and salt, Yarima said. I think they probably produced too much. It sound like kind of industrial brine versus the natural mold and salt. I know it's just still NaCl, but I mean, but yeah, good thought. Catherine, thank you for that, Jeff. Catherine, over to you.
Thanks, Jules. I just wanted to come back to you, Jeff, on the desalination, because I think was quite a large percentage, wasn't it? 46% so that's a big amount for a possible plant that may or may not come online. So is there a backup plan for what happens if that's not put in place?
Yeah, I suppose the context of desalination for us is that the big unknown for us is how significantly we'll have to reduce our groundwater abstractions by 2050. And that's to do with trying to realize ecological benefits of leaving more water in the environment, and assuming that we don't have an opportunity to kind of re-abstract that at say further downstream. So we are looking at that first before we would go to desal. We're very much seeing desal as a kind of last option, if you like. So if we end up with more significant reductions than we're anticipating, we would consider it. The other reason we are looking at it is for industrial purposes, so hydrogen production in particular, which needs a very pure feedstock. Now we're not aware of any kind of particular hydrogen facilities being planned in Essex, but there are in other counties, so across the Orwell into Suffolk and Norfolk, and particularly Lincolnshire, the South Humber Bank, which is obviously a major industrial area within the UK. So we're looking at it for that purpose as well as for drinking water.
Thank you.
Super, thanks very much indeed. Any more water-related questions from colleagues? Okay, good. Well, thank you very much indeed to Lucy, to Jeff, and to Helen for your presentations. That was very interesting. I hope the launch goes well on Wednesday. That is the launch of the water strategy, isn't it? I mean, and all that goes with it. Yeah. So good luck with that. And I know Peter's involved with that as well. So could we just quickly circle back again to the SIGs, and for those who haven't given us a headline for the year ahead, Dave, you've sort of done that. Luciana, is it community energy? Is it pressing that out? I'm giving you a little steer. So
yes, pressing that out and getting some of the groups to move from kind of an early stage to kind of more established and having lots of projects and not depending so much on grant funding, and on retrofit that the grants are actually taken by the residents as well. So not just that we bring them to Essex, but the residents take up the offer of low income grants that it's available for retrofit. I think Sam wants to come in on that.
Sam, is that on that?
Yeah, it is. It's just to add to Luciana's, don't disagree with anything that she said at all, but just to flag that we are starting to think about local area energy planning, which is absolutely key, because the energy grid, as we know, is critical to decarbonising both heat and transport and in unlocking new opportunities. So starting to think about that as well.
Super, and it is something in a lot of the talks that I give in the county, people are genuinely interested in this because they don't quite know what it means or what it looks like. And they can imagine what an electric vehicle is or a net zero home. It's a home with some other stuff in it, but they don't quite know what a community energy network or project or scheme would be. But people are obviously super interested if it might mean costs go down, or they can can see a transition to renewables regionally quite quickly. So super, that's great. Jason, it's the waste strategy, really, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly it's the waste strategy for us, but it also, I think it's tackling this issue that we have around how do we turn service enhancements into action by the individual. So it's really looking at how do we unblock those barriers that seem to exist, which prevent people from participating in circular economy activities. So redesigning our services to meet the needs of residents to really, overcome those barriers.
Super. Thank you very much for that. Graham, what's at the front of your mind for the built environment?
Unmute. Sorry, Jules. So in addition to, sorry, my plant is over there. So in addition to the 40,000 I suggested, I'm going to be as bold to say that we develop a suite of water-based policies which we can embed in local plans, listening to the conversation this morning, and also two other things that really spring to mind. One is progressing with the evidence on embodied carbon, which commissioners may recall they set a 2030 target to do that, which obviously needs the work done now in advance of 2030, but also provide some guidance for developers in terms of what it means to build to those standards. So how do we produce a simple pack to explain to maybe a small or medium-sized builder what they need to do in simple steps to get that far? So those would be some of my challenges I'm going to set myself.
Very good, very interesting. That's great. Excellent. Community, Tracy had to leave the meeting, and her summary was in the chat was local transport statements and EV infrastructure as her hopes and targets for this year. Community engagement, Liam, do you want to say anything about the priorities here?
Yeah, it's quite hard seeing as we've kind of got so many projects on the go, but if I'm going to pick one, I'm going to say continuing with our drive for the app. So like I mentioned earlier, it's really good for us because we've got a really real tangible way of measuring what people are doing with it. So by getting more residents to download it, we get more of an insight into what they're doing and kind of how they're working, how they're acting. So I'm going to say continue the drive for the app. So we've got the goal of this time next year to have 2,000 residents with kind of access to the app. So yeah, I'm going to use that one for us.
Lovely, that's great. Loretta, green economy, just transition, what's at the front of your mind for the coming year? You set out the three priorities.
Yeah, so I think there's two for us, really. I think it's around changing that shift in the mindset of businesses. So that 25% of our SME population seeing it as positive, the transition towards more sustainable practices. I think if we could shift that dial, so that's nearer to the 50% or even further in the next year, that would be huge for us in terms of getting them to think about this as an actual marketable proposition. But in terms of how we work going forward for the SIGs, I think it's really being able to think about how we work more collaboratively with the other SIG groups around green skills, green jobs, and not leaving anybody behind. So really that just transition piece, which is so important to the members of the group, I think, as well as like leveling up priorities. I think, how do we maximize the jobs and skills from the work that's going on in all of the SIG groups, I think.
Very good. I mean, I do want to re-emphasize this point about the just transition. We can have the good ideas, we can have the great science, we can have the technologies, but if they're rejected by people because of perceptions about who can access them and what they might mean if you're at the poor end of the income scale, and we have seen where that has gone badly wrong in many other locations and countries, and to continue on that is not just a tactic, it's a real spreading of benefit. So continuous emphasizing of that, I think, would be great. Lucy, do you want to just summarize the water side of things? This is kind of dropping you in, but you started with the presentation. We've got the event on Wednesday. What's your thinking about about the various aspects of too much water, too little water, the thinking about supply, quality, and catchments and regional activities. Well, what would be your kind of hopes for achievements in this area for the year ahead?
I mean, it links back to probably what Dave said for our kind of service areas, that nature-based solutions, and trying to see, you know, up our delivery, look to other partners to collaborate and deliver nature-based solutions, which include benefits for water quality and water resources, really.
Yeah.
And increasing water literacy for everybody. That's my...
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
really passionate about the new website Explorer, and I hope that slots into a lot of school classrooms.
And as you said and the others said, water quality is actually nationally at the top of people's concerns because you can see it. Whereas it's not all of the water quality can be seen, but you can see some very visibly where things are problematic, and that's obviously one of the reasons why people are super worried about this. But it's a spur to action as well, isn't it? So very good, great. Sam and Catherine, a couple of comments to finish off.
Yeah, just to add to what Lucy was saying, of course, the water strategy is a key underpinning document as we think about development of the local nature recovery strategy. And that is a key piece for us this year. So we hope to bring that out to public consultation later in the year. But the water strategy and the challenges uncovered by the water strategy absolutely feed into thinking in that space as well.
Good linkage with that. Thank you for that. Catherine.
Thank you, Jules. Yeah, just to say thank you very much to Loretta for that update on the just transition to a green economy. On the linking across the other SIGs and being greater than the sum of the parts, one really simple first immediate link that strikes me is the great work that Liam was sharing with us on community engagement. But a lot of the engagement is about how we can change our personal behaviours and reduce our own emissions or reduce our impact. But actually, we could be communicating a lot more about the opportunity of a just and green transition and how there are going to be some great new jobs and skills and opportunities out there. So we could talk about the narrative in a different way. It's not just about our responsibility to reduce carbon, it's also about the opportunity of a green transition. So we could maybe join up some of that a bit more and talk about that, and that helps with addressing some of the biggest barriers, which I think Jules is alluding to across all income groups, which is partly it's fear and ignorance is getting in people's way, or being asked to do something else on top of all the other things they've got to do, rather than a framing that makes this an enormous opportunity for everyone.
Very well put. Thank you very much, Catherine. Excellent. Well, thank you to everybody. Thank you to all the SIG leads and speakers for contributions today, and thank you for the 3 presentations on water. Jeff and Helen, thank you for coming into the meeting and giving your presentations really interesting and helpful. Next meeting is the 4th of July. I think that's right, isn't it? Should be in our diaries. So an important day for us all for the next stage of things. Thank you very much, everybody. Really, really good work. I think a kind of pat on the back again for everybody's fantastic work, and thank you again to Sam and Louise and the whole team for providing really brilliant leadership in all of this area. And I know there are lots of good things happening regionally across the country. I still think that we are in the vanguard on a lot of these, and when you add up the list of just what we've heard about today, which is only a summary of all of the actions, again, it's just super impressive. And I think that I would just go back to the strategic point, in a sense, that Graham is making when it comes to net zero housing, is that if we can, we should press ahead and do the right thing regionally, even if the government of the day, for whatever reason, is minded not to go so far. We should continue to take leadership where we can, because we have a clear plan to get to net zero, and that in itself provides exemplars and exemplary leadership to others. It points towards the art of the possible
sure.
rather than the impossible. So I commend all of the work on that, and I think we'd just like to thank everybody involved in that for the good work, and thank you to all the commissioners as ever. Great stuff. That
Thank you
just
very
about
much, Jules.
draws it to an end. Yeah, thank you, Jackie. That's
Thanks.
great.
Seeing is believing.
My call to action at the end of the meeting. So that's great. Yeah, good spring, everybody. Hope it all goes well. I mean, maybe we've got through spring already. I don't know.
Yeah.
Bad, isn't it? Yeah, thanks very much, and thank you,
Thanks.
everybody. We'll be back again in due course. Good luck and safe travels. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.